ULTCW. We're in this room because we are here to go get our blessings. We're not waiting on anybody to get them for us. We're not waiting on anybody to do it instead of us. We're going to get our own blessings. Is that right? So everybody here is in this room because you have demonstrated leadership, because you have made the sacrifices, taken time away from your family and your clients to build this gift called ULTCW. And on behalf of the 180,000 members that we represent, I want to appreciate you for making that sacrifice, for coming here, for working on not just your behalf, but on behalf of each and every caregiver in our union, each and every caregiver in our state, and each and every caregiver in this country that's depending on us to be successful. So congratulations to you. And we're here to do something that we actually have never done. While most of you in this room have been a part of a ULTCW gathering before, where we've come together to talk about our mission, our vision, and make plans to accomplish those things, we actually have never come together to do what we're about to do for the next 2 days, which is to talk about leadership. What does leadership look like? What gifts do you bring into this room that you use each and every day to act as leaders for your family, for your children, for your consumer, taking all of those gifts and really talking about how we manifest and really create leadership in ULTCW, but also leadership in SCIU. And and to start that conversation off, I actually want to talk about my story. A lot of folks who are in the room may not have heard me talk about my story or have an appreciation of how I got to this place of my own leadership. And my story isn't very much different from yours. I grew up a poor child in the deep South. Some of you might not know, but I was raised both in Mississippi and Louisiana. Shout out for Louisiana and in Mississippi. I was raised, I have 2 older brothers, and because, like many families, my father was married before he married my mom, I have 6 half-siblings. So there's a total of 9 of us. My mother was a home care worker. She provided care for my father when he turned ill. She was a teacher's assistant. She was in every classroom that I was in until I went to high school. She was a security officer, where she was demanded to carry a weapon that she had not been trained to use and provide security in some of New Orleans' most dangerous housing projects. She was a nursing home worker. She worked the 11 to 7 overnight shift, and it was the best time in her day when she made it home just in time to walk me and my 2 brothers to the crossing guard as we were going to school. My father had heart disease and was sick ever since I can remember. By the time he passed away, when I was 16 years old, he had had 6 heart attacks. He had a stroke. He had had angioplasty and had also received a new heart, had gotten a heart transplant from an 18-year-old who died in a motorcycle accident. So I was able to see life through the eyes of a child of a caregiver. Not very different from the way your children see life. And as I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I made a decision to go to a historically black college in Jackson, Mississippi. I went to Jackson State University. Jackson State in the house. I went to Jackson State University, and I had the honor of seeing social justice through the eyes of SNCC organizers. My professors lived their youth in the civil rights movement. They were jailed, they were beat, they had dogs released on them. There were 2 students who were, in 1968, who were killed right on the campus, on Jackson State's campus, right outside my dorm room. And so my frame of reference for social justice was that of the civil rights movement. As you guys know, when you, from looking at the news and sort of what you know about our country, there are no real unions in Mississippi. And so I didn't join SEIU or reach where I am today standing before you because I knew what the union was all about. I knew that somehow I had to make sure that my life made a difference on behalf of others. That's what I learned at Jackson State University. And as I was about to graduate from college, like most college students, I had no clue what I wanted to do. 2 weeks before, I had applied to 10 law schools. I had gotten into 3. One of them was Harvard University. And I still wasn't sure that I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't believe that I had enough experience with regular people to be able to go and call myself a professional on their behalf. And so I called up SEIU, actually the AFL-CIO, and they interviewed me over the phone. And 2 weeks after I graduated, I have been working for SEIU. My first campaign was the home care workers campaign in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I went from Wisconsin to back actually to New Orleans, where SEIU was organizing the city workers of New Orleans. I then was sent to Philadelphia, where we were organizing janitors. I went from Philadelphia to Connecticut, where we were trying to organize the workers at Yale New Haven Hospital. I went from Connecticut to Georgia, where SEIU has, for the last 10 years, been trying to organize the state workers in Georgia and the city workers of Atlanta. I went from Georgia to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, where I was working for Local 1199 EDC at the time to represent hospital workers and help to organize and bargain hospital worker and nursing home contracts. I went from Baltimore to St. Louis, where I was organizing nursing home workers both in St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois. And I went from Missouri then back to Washington, D.C. In Baltimore, where I was then asked by our national leadership to serve as Secretary-Treasurer of a new organization that SEIU was creating in partnership with Unite Here, the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union. I served as National Secretary-Treasurer for an organization and a campaign that was focused on representing food service workers, workers who have been contracted out to provide food service and janitorial services. I went from there back to our national union in Washington, D.C., where I was then asked to serve as the national director of our security organizing campaign by Executive Vice President Valerie Long. And we made an incredible difference in the lives of security officers all around the country and indeed the world. As Valerie was making her decision to move on to her next station in life, I was then asked to serve as the National Division Director for the Property Services Division, the division of SEIU that represents janitors, security officers, airport workers, window cleaners, food service workers, and I feel like I was able to make an incredible contribution to leading the division and that group of workers all across the country. And then you came. I finally had the opportunity to work for women and men who reminded me of my mother. Women and men who each and every day, their life is really boiled down to a simple four-letter word, that word being love. I had the opportunity to come here when the local was in trusteeship and work to earn your trust, work to earn your confidence. And in February of 2010 was when you elected me to serve as your statewide president of ULTCW. And for that honor and that privilege, I am incredibly grateful. I don't take it lightly, and each and every day I go to bed, I wake up with your stories, with your goals, with your dreams, with your challenges, with your struggles in my heart and in my mind. And it is, many of you say, Laphonza, you're getting so thin. What are you doing? Are we working you too hard? And I say right back, it is a labor of love. I love you as much as you love this organization. And I know that there is nothing that together our love can't overcome. I tell that story because today is about leadership, and you may start in one place where you feel like your life, your situation is going to be your obstacle, that you will never be able to push through the challenges that you face in your life each and every day. I tell that story so that you know where I come from, where my love comes from, how I can connect to you, and what it is that we have in common. I tell that story so that we can all appreciate that leadership doesn't start one place magically. It happens over time, and we all continue to learn and grow and develop and get better. I often say to our board members, I never promised you that I would be a perfect president, but I did promise you that I would give it my all. And that's what leadership really is about, accepting that you can make mistakes, being clear about your purpose, and being willing to have the courage to get in the game. And we're all here because we're in the game. We're in the game. And we're in the game not just to win for one person. We're in the game to win dignity for everybody. And as a leader that is still learning how to lead, and I have no shame or embarrassment in telling you that I am still learning. It is all on-the-job training. But as a leader who is learning how to lead, there's one story that many of you have heard me tell that really helps to remind me on a constant basis what leadership is about. And it's a story that comes out of the book of Judges. Let me preface this story by saying I am not a Bible expert, nor in this moment am I pretending to be. I want to also preface this story by saying it is not my intention to offend anyone who may be of a different religious belief. I simply want to tell a story. About leadership. So, in the book of Judges, the context of what's happening, what's going on is the Jews had been misbehaving again, and God had essentially surrendered them to the leadership of one king, and the leader of the army of that king was a leader named Sisera. The army commander, his name was Sisera. And Sisera led as a really, really oppressive leader. And the people of the community really felt like they had to find a way, though they had disobeyed the word of God, they really had to find a way of liberation. And so in chapter 4, enters the scene Deborah. Deborah was a prophetess, and even in biblical times, women were leading. So Deborah was a prophetess, and people came to her for advice on how to free themselves from the oppression of Sisera. And so Deborah sent for Barak. Who did Deborah send for? Barak. So Deborah sent for Barak. You may know somebody else named Barak. Deborah sent for Barak. And Barak was a leader of one of the tribes in Jerusalem at the time, and there were many tribes, but Deborah sent for Barak. She asked Barak to gather 10,000 troops and meet her on the top of Mount Tabor, that she would lead Sisera and his 900 chariots of iron into the valley so that Barak and the 10,000 troops could attack. Well, Barak said back to Deborah, I'm afraid. I'll do it, but I'll only do it if you go with me. Deborah assures Barak that she'll be there and she'll do her part. Her part was to lead the troops into the valley. Barak goes back to the community to talk to other tribal leaders to get them to bring their troops to be a part of the liberation. And Barak ran into some trouble. Barak went to other tribal leaders, and there were folks who said, no, I'm doing okay, you go fight. Anybody heard that before? Barak went back to other tribal leaders, and they said, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose everything I have if we don't win. No, you go fight. Now, Barak chose not to get discouraged. He kept on going until he found 10,000 troops that would be willing to go to Mount Tabor to defeat Sisera. Sure enough, they get to the top of Mount Tabor. Deborah does her part. Down in the valley, they see Sisera and his 900 chariots of iron, and they attack. Sisera, being the courageous leader he is, he decided that he was going to not fight, but he was going to escape. So Sisera leaves the battle and secretly escapes out to what I call the suburbs. Sisera went out to where the Kenites live. And the Kenites in this story were sort of representative of the 1%. They lived fine. Sisera took care of them. He wasn't as oppressive with that group of folks. So he wanders out to where the Kenites live, and he ran across the tent of Jael. And Jael welcomes him into the tent. He asked for a place to rest and some water. For now Jael, she wanted to do more, so she gave him milk and allowed him to go to sleep. Jael then goes outside and grabs a tent spike and a mallet. And while Sisera is sleeping, she drives that tent spike through his head and kills him. So what's the moral of this story? Why am I telling you this story? This story really is a story about leadership. Let's go back to Deborah calling for Barak. Barak could have said, just like those other tribal leaders, you know what, Deborah, I'm cool. Me and my folks are doing all right. You got to call somebody else to lead this fight. But Barak, just like many of you, answered the call to leadership, stood in the gap when times were tough, and actually continued the fight of what was required for the liberation of his people. One part of the story that I left out was that in the story, Deborah says to Barak early on that glory would not be his. That the glory of the liberation, even though he was the one, in the middle of the fight, he was the one who had to go from township to township, from tribe to tribe. He was the one who was risking his life. Even though he was doing all of that, the glory of the liberation would not be Barak's. But Barak knowingly made those sacrifices, did what he had to do, because it was never about Barak. It was always about where we were trying to get to. It was always about that destination of our journey. And Barak willingly made those sacrifices because the importance of the liberation of his people was more important than any glory he could ever get. And then, if you look at Jael, Jael was nowhere in the fight, had nothing to do with it, wasn't even being oppressed. She was living good. Jael understood the pain of somebody else, and she herself killed the oppressor. We all, each and every day, live in communities where we see other people's pain. We all understand that our union is not just a gift for us, but we actually make decisions that we're going to use our union as a gift for other people because we see their pain, because we see their struggle, because we understand their stories. We know that they don't have anybody else if we don't step up. So this story is a story that always reminds me that leadership matters. It's a story that always reminds me, frankly, it ain't about me. And it's a story that always forces me to put myself in somebody else's shoes in order for us all to get to where we're trying to go on our journey to justice. And I continually have to go back to that story when times get tough. When, just like when you are knocking on doors and somebody says, I hate that union, slam the door in your face. When somebody says, the union ain't done nothing for me. When somebody says, why should I care about politics? When somebody says, that union is just a bunch of crooks. I know, and I know, and I have to go through it just as much as you, differently, but just as much as you. And I want to offer that story to you to remind you that there is a place that we're trying to get to. And that one door, that one obstacle, that one door, that's not where we're going. We're going to the other 180,000 doors. Because that's what we're really trying to be about. That's what we're really trying to be about. And I want to leave you with this. I said earlier that I have never professed to be a perfect president. I promised everybody here that if you trust me, if you walk with me, we will all get to that place called justice. We will all get to that place called justice together. We will all make mistakes along the way, but we will all get to that place called justice together. That's where we're headed. That's where we're going. And we got to bring not just ULTCW, we have to bring our communities with us. We have to bring undocumented immigrants with us. We have to bring those who don't have health care with us. We have to make sure we bring the low-wage workers with us, the fast food workers with us, the child care workers with us. We have to make sure we're building a movement. We're building a movement not just of home care, but of every worker in this country, because we all deserve dignity. Dignity is where we're going. Dignity is where we're headed. Dignity is our destination. And it starts right here. It starts with our leadership. It starts with your contribution. It starts with your sacrifice. It starts with all of our blood, sweat, and tears to build this union, to be that vehicle. To be that vehicle, the car that we're all going to get in and drive towards dignity. Thank you guys so very much. It is an honor to serve as your president. Thank you very much. Let's go get our blessings. We will all get to that place called justice together. We will all make mistakes along the way, but we will all get to that place called justice together. That's where we're headed. That's where we're going. And we got to bring not just ULTCW, we have to bring our communities with us. We have to bring undocumented immigrants with us. We have to bring those who don't have health care with us. We have to make sure we bring the low-wage workers with us, the fast food workers with us, the child care workers with us. We have to make sure we're building a movement. We're building a movement not just of home care, but of every worker in this country, because we all deserve dignity. Dignity is where we're going. Dignity is where we're headed. Dignity is our destination. And it starts right here. It starts with our leadership. It starts with your contribution. It starts with your sacrifice. It starts with all of our blood, sweat, and tears to build this union, to be that vehicle. To be that vehicle, the car that we're all going to get in and drive towards dignity. Thank you guys so very much. It is an honor to serve as your president. Thank you very much. Let's go get our blessings.